Good morning, grade 10s, and welcome to the end of term 1 and the revision for the term 1 topics that was dealt with. And I just want to congratulate you guys for making it through your first term of economics, and I hope that you had an enjoyable term and that you found the topics dealt with this term rather interesting, and that you can now speak to adults and have more knowledge as to what is happening around you. Right, let's have a look at what we are going to be doing today. So, what I want to concentrate on this morning is the guidelines in answering the economics examinations. Please bear in mind, you guys have never written an economics exam as such. You've written tests up till now, but this is just to help you understand the exam layout and how you go about in answering not only examination questions, but your test questions as well, as your test questions are set in order to get you ready for the examination. So, the instructions tell you what is required. And this is very important because several times students do not read the instructions given at the start of the exam. If you deviate from them, it can count against you and thereby causing you to miss out on marks. Okay? So especially in economics, where there are choice questions, you need to make sure where the choices are situated so that you don't land up answering all of the questions, running out of time, where you didn't have to do all of them, and you could have used that time to think out better answers for the ones you have then answered. Right, in addition to the above, please note the following. Use the 10 minutes reading time as provided to you at the beginning of the examination or test to decide which questions you will answer in section B and C. Remember, these are choice questions. I just say to you now, there are choices available. So section A is compulsory. Everybody has to answer that. But in section B and section C, there are choice questions, right? And how do you decide which are the ones that you're going to answer? Well, section C deals with the essay question, of which there will be 2 of them, and you need to answer 1 of the 2. So please remember, make sure it is a topic that you know very well and that you know you can score the most amount of marks. Many times students are put off by the 10-mark question of the essay, but do not let that be a deterrent. If you've got enough to do the body and you know your introduction and conclusion, you are assured of your 30 out of 40. And when it comes to the additional part, you just have to wing it there then if you're not certain as to what to be writing for that section. And then in section B, you will base your choices on your 8-mark questions in section B, right? Because section B is out of 40 and you have 1 open-ended 8-mark question and 1 8-mark question which is from the note. So make sure you can answer the 8-mark questions before deciding on which question to answer in section B. The next bullet point is very important. Write only with a blue and or black pen. Why do I say and? Sometimes the ink runs up and you're halfway through your exam and the only other pen you have with you is maybe a black pen, or you started in black and the only other pen you have is blue. So it is fine, you can write in blue or black, okay? And please make sure you always have an extra pen with you. Do not write in pencil. Any answers in pencil will be regarded as an examination irregularity. please, I know in primary school and some schools up to grade 9, kids are allowed to write in pencil, but please, in economics, we only write in blue or black ink. If you do use a pencil, it will be regarded as an irregularity. You can use a pencil to draw your graphs, your sketches, your illustrations, your curves, etc. But bear in mind, the labels on your graphs must be in ink, right? Must be in either the blue or black pen that you are using. Always write neatly and legibly. Marks will be forfeited if handwriting is illegible. Obviously, if somebody cannot read your answer, they won't be able to give you the marks that you deserve. If the marker cannot decipher and make sense of your handwriting, the answers will be marked as incorrect. So it is in your best interest to ensure you write neatly and also that you write so that it is readable. Okay, just quickly now, you have 10 minutes reading time before the exam. Use that 10 minutes wisely. Don't worry about looking at section A because you have to answer that section. So read your section B questions and you're looking out for the 8 markers specifically, and look at your essay and make sure you can give enough information for your body. Don't be concerned about the 10 marker. Do not let that be a put off for you at all, okay? If you know your body very well, you know that you can at least score 30 out of 40 for that essay, instead of, oh, I know the 10 marker, but I don't know the body that well, and then you land up with like 20 out of 40, okay? And use blue and black ink and no pencil writing. Right, so question 1, this is section A. It is compulsory, and that would be question 1. So this question is compulsory and must be completed by all candidates. To answer this question, it is essential that the candidates know the economic concepts or terminology and the definitions and or descriptions as well. So in order to do well in section A, you need to learn your list of concepts at the start of each section, okay? So you will see in some textbooks they give it to you at the start, or maybe your teacher's given you a list of concepts that you need to know for each section. So make sure you study those concepts very well and that you know your definitions as well, okay? Because those are the things that are going to assist you in answering your question 1. Attempt an answer for all the questions, even if you do not know the answer. Please, I am asking you, do not leave any blank spaces by question 1, even if you must guess, right? You just put in something there. If you are uncertain about the answer, continue writing the examination and return to the question at the end of the examination. It may be that you can find clues for the unanswered questions as you proceed with the test or examination. Remember to leave lines open for this. This also makes it easier to see where you need to complete answers if you need to return, right? So don't get stuck on a question and spend 10 minutes trying to work out the answer. Leave it, move on, and as it says there, sometimes you get answers to that questions in section A, either in section B, or maybe even in section C in the essay. While you're writing, you'll remember, oh yes, that is that answer for section A. If you do not know the answer, take an educated guess. It is important to note the following. If you have questions unanswered, you will get no marks. However, if you write an answer which makes economic sense and answers the question, you can be awarded marks, right? Sometimes students think, no, that sounds too silly, I'm not going to write that down. You write it down, it might just be the answer that they are looking for. Right, 1.1 consists of what we call multiple choice questions. So obviously you've been exposed to this type of questions before. They're also called MCQs, right? So this is where you are given a statement and then you are given 4 possible answers to that statement. And easily you can see immediately which are the ones that do not fit, and there's always like 2 of them that, it can be either or. Right, so when answering your multiple choice questions, you need to do the following. Read the question or statement thoroughly before attempting to answer. So even if you have to read it twice, you read it thoroughly and then you try to answer, right? And with this, I always say to learners, think of what you think the possible answer would be before you even look at the options that are given. So you think, okay, this is the answer, and then you go and check, is my answer in the options that are given? If your particular answer is not there, is there anything that is closest to that? Okay, so 4 options are provided as possible answers to a question or a statement. And please bear in mind, it is the most correct answer that we are looking for, right? As I said, there's always a possibility that there might be 2 of them that are possible answers, but we're looking for the most possible. It is expected of learners to choose only one option or possible answer and write down only the letter next to the question number. Right. Why we say only one option? Because what learners would sometimes do, they think the answer can be A or D, and then they'll write A/D. You're not going to be marked for that, okay? You've got to make a choice. You can put there A/D and then come back to it and say, okay, I decide A is not the right one, and then you delete that answer. But we only want to see one letter next to each number. We don't want to see more than one letter. If you've written more than one letter, make sure you take out one of them, because if there's more than one letter, the question will not be marked. Whereas if you choose one of the 2, you might just choose the correct one, and at least then you can score your 2 marks. So only one option or possible answer per question will be accepted. If more than one option or answer is written, both will be marked as incorrect. Gone are the days when we used to say, the answer was D and he has written D as his first option. No, if you've got more than one option, we just don't mark it at all. Right. Hints on how to answer the multiple choice questions. Read the entire question or statement, please. So many times learners fall into this trap. They read half the answer and they already think, they read half the question and they already think, this is the answer to this question. But they didn't read the second half of the question, which now changes what they thought the answer would have been. First, cover the possible answers to the question, right? So look at what are the possible answers before you make your choice. Formulate or anticipate the correct possible answer in your mind. Open the possible answers or options given. Right? What I mean is, like, cover the options, think what it is, and then you open it up to read them. See if your choice to the answer is one of the options or answers. If your answer is not available, then you must use a method of elimination, right? So eliminate the answers which you know are totally wrong or nonsensical, meaning it doesn't even fit in here. This has got nothing to do with the concept that's being tested. So then you know this is definitely not one of the answers that can be given. Select the best answer from the remaining possible answers. If you are uncertain, I cannot stress this enough, go ahead with writing the examination and return to the multiple choice questions at the end of the examination. It may be that you can find clues to the answers as you proceed with the examination. Right? I've said this before, but because it's so important, I'm saying it to you again. It is sometimes good to make an educated guess if you do not know the answer, but never leave the question unanswered, especially with your multiple choice questions, because remember, each multiple choice question is worth 2 marks. So if you just leave it blank, you are immediately throwing away 2 marks, which can be the difference between a and a B, or a B and a C symbol at the end of the day. So make sure you answer all of the questions. Right. Let's look at, we've dealt with the circular flow is one of the main topics of term 1. So let us have a look at the multiple choice questions regarding the circular flow. Let's just see now to put into practice what I've just been explaining to you on how to answer your multiple choice questions. So 1.1.1 reads, the amount of money that flows out of the circular flow is what? Let's look at it again. The amount of money that flows out of the circular flow is what? So now I must see in that statement, what is my clue? Here they're talking about money leaving the flow, right? They're saying amount of money that flows out of. So it is money that is leaving the circular flow, right? It's not money that's coming in, it is money that is leaving. So immediately I must think, when it comes to the flow of money, there are 2 concepts involved with this. It's money can either be an injection into the flow, or it can be a leakage from the flow. Those are my 2 concepts dealing with the flow of money within the circular flow. And I can see from our options given, this is A and C. So B and D don't belong at all. So I know my answer is between A and C, right? And now I go and read it again. It's talking about money that is leaving, right? Not money coming in. So if it was coming in, it would have been an injection, but it's not money coming in, it is money leaving. So therefore, the only possible answer there would be C, which is the leakage. So my statement would read, the amount of money that flows out of the circular flow is a leakage. Right, so now I've got my answer as, my answer I know now is C is the correct answer there, right? Then we go to 1.1.2. There it reads, the circular flow model of an open economy shows the functioning of an economy that includes the what sector. So I need you to just think about that for a moment. We think about what are the parties that are involved within an open economy. If you remember, when we dealt with the circular flow, we looked at open economy and closed economy. And we know that in a closed economy, our participants were the government, the households, and the businesses, right? And when we then went over to the open economy, we also then added the foreign or the outside world into it as well, the foreign sector, right? So therefore, here we're talking about the circular flow model of an open economy. So it shows the functioning of an economy that includes the, and the only possible answer here would be B, the foreign sector. Because domestic doesn't belong, business is in both open and closed. It is the foreign sector that sort of changes your closed economy to an open economy. Right, so the statement would then read as follows. The circular flow model of an open economy shows the functioning of an economy that includes the foreign sector. So my answer there would be B. Right, 1.1.3, labor is bought and sold in the what market? Now we need to remember, where does labor fit in? When we think of the circular flow, where is labor? What is its main thing that it belongs to? So labor is one of my factors of production. If you remember, there were 4 factors of production, and this you were taught in grade 9 already, right? And we just reiterated it again when we introduced the circular flow. So your 4 factors of production are capital, entrepreneurship, land, and labor. So we know that labor is one of my factors of production. So if it's a factor of production, then there is no mistaking that the correct answer, or the only answer for 1.1.3 there would be A, which is the factor market, right? So labor is bought and sold in the factor market. Right, 1.1.4, savings flow back into the circular flow as what? Right, now we need to think back again as when we did this. And we said that households don't spend all of their income, they save some of their income with the financial institutions. But I also said to you, your money is now not put in a little box with your name on it. That savings that we have with them is then the money that banks can use to give out as loans to businesses or other individuals who require that, right? So therefore, we say that savings is a leakage because it's money that flows out of the circular flow, but that savings becomes an injection when that money is used by the banks to give out as loans to people. And when you give a loan to someone, it's like you are investing in that person's business or their idea that they have, right? So therefore, your correct answer there would be 1.1.4. Your only correct answer would be D, which is investment. Savings flow back into the circular flow as investment, which is D. So for our answers for the circular flow, the letters we are looking for are C, B, A, and D. Right. We're going to look at the business cycle. We're also still looking at MCQs because the circular flow and the business cycle are the main topics for term 1 that we've dealt with. So let's look at this one. 1.1.1 here, a period where there is a general increase in economic activities is called a, now there's a clue in the statement. It says a general increase in economic activities. So if you think of an increase, you think of things that are moving upwards, right? So then your only answer there would be, because there's a word that starts with up, which is the upswing, which is A. So your answer would read, a period where there is a general increase in economic activities is called a upswing, right? Can't be a depression and it can't be a recession because those two phases are part of the downswing, right? And that is not where economic activities are increasing. Okay, so my only correct answer is A. 1.1.2, indicators that change at the same time as the changes happen in the economy is known as what indicators? Now, as you were taught, we have those 4 indicators, and leading, lagging, composite, coincident, right? So obviously if you hear from the words already, leading, telling you where we're going, lagging, telling you where we've been, composite is made into one whole number. We take different aggregates and we make it into one. So the only possible answer that I have there is A, which is the coincident indicator, right? So indicators that change at the same time as the changes happen in the economy is known as coincident indicators. So the correct answer there would be the letter A. 1.1.3. The difference in the value of the output at the peak. Now you've got to think now. When you hear the word peak, what are you thinking of? Peak is up, is the uppermost part of the cycle, right? And the value of the output at the trough being the lowest part of the cycle. So we're looking at the difference from the peak to the trough, right? That we're looking at. And the options that we are given there is the trend line, and we know the trend line is showing us where the economy is heading. And then the next one is the amplitude, and that is what we are referring to. The difference between the peak and the trough, that is known as your amplitude. Your real output and your length is measured from trough to trough or peak to peak. But here we're not measuring the length, we're measuring the amplitude, okay? Real output is your axis or the name of one of the axes, okay? So the only correct answer there would be amplitude. So the correct statement would be the difference in the value of output at the peak and the value of output at the trough of a business cycle is known as the amplitude. 1.1.4. The start of the upswing is known as so now remember, we're going into an upswing, right? And then there are two phases of the upswing, two phases of the downswing. And I've just explained that by 1.1.1. I said to you, your depression and your recession are the phases of a downswing. The question here is talking about the start of the upswing. So now already I know A and B are out. They are not possible answers here because those two phases refers to a downswing. So I'm left with recovery and a prosperity. Now remember, we want to know the start of the upswing. So when it is starting to pick up, right? So that would then be, your answer there would be the recovery, right? The start of the upswing is known as a recovery because you're recovering from something, right? So it's starting at that point. So the answer there would be C. So the answers for business cycle multiple choice are, the first one is A. The second one is once again A. And then we've got B, and the last one, 1.1.4 would be C. So please note, we've got AA and C, AA, B, C. So once again, it doesn't have to be different letters, right? It can be like AA, B, B, C, C, that kind of thing. Right. Now we're going to move over to section B. And how do we answer we're still busy with section A, but now we're busy with the 1.2, which is the matching type questions, right? This is where you will be given a table, so you have to read the question very carefully, right? The term is provided in column A, and the description is provided in column B. Learners are expected to provide the description in column B next to the term in column A. Once again, only one choice or option or possible answer is acceptable per term. Example, 1.2.1a and not 1.2.1a or G, right? Only one choice from column accepted in to match against the term in column A. So the one column would give you, so column A would give you the term and column B would give you the description, and you must choose the description to meet that term. Okay, so once again, if you give, like we show you there, 1.2.1a or G, even if one of them is correct, they will both be marked as wrong. You've got to choose only one letter, right? The information that can be linked to each other include economic concepts with a definition or description, dates with events, theory with the theorist, problem with a solution, etc. An example of how to answer matching questions. Read all options in each column before answering. Use logic, look for logical clues in the statement or the description. Use your knowledge and first answer the terms which you know. So go with the ones that you know very well, and then you cross out the ones that you've already answered. Okay? And once you've now already done the ones you know, then you look at the ones that you are struggling with. So then you tackle the tougher choices and then see if you can find a match for the remaining terms. Right, we're going to look at an example now, or how to do this now. So there we've got column A and we've got column B. So you see column A has all the concepts. We have business cycle, injection, households, capital market, and exogenous factors. So if I look at the easiest one for me there is injection, because we dealt with that earlier on. An injection, we said, is when money is put into the circular flow, right? When money is put into the circular flow. Households, those are the people who own the factors of production. Your capital market are your long-term finances. Exogenous factors are the things from outside which affects the business cycle. And then by now you should know the definition of a business cycle is obviously where they show you the difference in economic activities over a period of time. Okay, so now we look at B and see what are the options that are given. A talks about long-term financial instruments, example, bonds. I just said to you, long-term investments is dealt with in the capital market. So I know 1.2.4 is A, so I can scratch A out. I cannot use it anywhere else, and 1.2.4 is done. B, climatic conditions. Okay, I'm not sure about that one, so I'm going to leave it and I'm going on to the next. Government spending. If I think of government spending money, they are then putting money into the circular flow, so that would be an injection. So now I know my 1.2.2 would be C. And then D, a group of people that live together and make economic decisions. Obviously, people who live together, households. So 1.2.3 would be D. And E, the repeating and fluctuating levels of economic activity over a period of time, which is my business cycle. So 1.2.1 will be E. So the only one that I have available still is letter B, which are climatic conditions. And in my column A, the only one I haven't used is 1.2.5 exogenous factors, which means then that must be for the letter B. So if we just look at that once again, my business cycles, that is the letter E, 1.2.2 would be C, 1.2.3 D, 1.2.4 A, and 1.2.5 would be the letter B. This is the one where learners score good marks. Most times people get their full amount of marks for this section here, because your answers are there they're all there for you. Right, then the last section A that you have to do is 1.3, which is the more difficult one, right? Give one term for each of the following descriptions. A description is given and it is expected of the learners to give only one term for the description. The learners may not provide answers in the form of abbreviations, acronyms, and examples. If learners use abbreviations, acronyms, and examples for the question in the test or examination, they will forfeit the marks. So, for example, if the answer is gross domestic product and you write GDP, you'll get no marks for it, right? So let's look at these ones now. This is the section where sometimes people get 0 out of it's normally out of 6, so sometimes they get 0 for this section. They just can't think of one definition or description. The owners of the production of factors in the economy, So we just said the owners of the production factors in the economy, we said earlier on, are households. The main source of revenue to the state, how does the state make their money, is obviously from taxation. Now here also, many times students will write income tax. Income tax is just one example of taxation, right? There are various taxations that they make use of. The governor of the Reserve Bank of South Africa, please, I cannot stress enough, you need to know your governor of the Reserve Bank, Minister of Finance. Those are the two major people, that play a role when it comes to business cycles. Right, so your Reserve Bank, actually, if you have paper money with you, whether it's a 10 rand or a 20 rand or a 50 rand, the governor of the Reserve Bank actually signs our money. So his name is on the money. So there you will find the answer. So, and that person, the governor of the Reserve Bank, is none other than Lesatya Kaganyago. The highest turning point of the business cycle, we dealt with this under the section, the 1.1 question, where they spoke about the difference between the peak and the trough. So the highest turning point is the peak, and the phase that follows the recovery phase, we had that also in section A, because we had the recovery phase is followed by the prosperity phase, right? Those are your two phases of your upswing. Right. When we now move on, that is, sorry, let's just go back there for a moment. So that completes your section A, right? You got 1.1, you have multiple choice questions, right? Where you're given a statement and 4 options given of what you must only choose 1. Then you've got your 1.2, where it's a table. Column A has the term or concept, and column B has the description or definition, and you've got to match the columns. And as I said, this is a fairly easy one. And then 1.3 is the most difficult, which deals with a statement that's given to you, and you've got to recognize the economic concept that's being referred to. Now, as I said at the start, in order to answer section A, whether you're answering 1.1, 1.2 or 1.3, if you know your concepts for each section and you've studied them and you know the definitions, you know the descriptions, you will not find any problems with section A, right? So learning those descriptions are important. And what you can do is to make Quizlets for yourself, right? Or if the teacher doesn't make, you don't have to wait for the teacher to do the Quizlets for you. You can make your own Quizlets, and that is how you learn. For those of you who do not have access to computers, don't worry. You don't have to worry about Quizlets. You make yourself little cards, right? And you write the concept on the one side, and you write the description at the back. And as a student, what I used to do, I used to walk around, because in my day we didn't have computers, so everything had to be handwritten. Then I would make me these cards and I would carry it in my shirt pocket. And during break or that, I would just flip it out and have a read and test my friends around me. And that is how you get to know the concepts. Right, we're moving on now to section B. And remember, this is the choice section, right? This is where you must choose one. So you are given 3 questions, of which you must only answer 2 of the 3, right? And the way I've set it up here is exactly the way it will be set up in your examinations and your tests, right? So you have your question 2, and they will tell you what it deals with, as well as the amount of marks and minutes, right? Now your 2.1 has 2 sections, and those are your easy parts, okay? Those are your easy questions. Your 2.1 is for 4 marks, and those are the easy ones, right? So the first one there says, 2.1.1 says, list 2 types of consumption, right? So you're just making a list. You don't have to explain, you don't have to discuss, you're just saying what it is, right? And therefore, what that means there, it says 2 times 1 means you must give 2 things, and for each one you are going to receive 1 mark, which will then give you a total of 2 marks. And the answer there is obviously immediate and deferred consumption. 2.1.2 is more a out of the box kind of question, and there they ask you, how will doing mathematics at school help you if you want to become an economist? Now you see, that is 1 times 2, meaning you've just got to give a sentence, okay? And there you can give anything. As you know, or by now you should know, within economics, you had dealt with calculations, you had dealt with graphs, and these are all things that you are taught in maths, right? So when it comes to being an economist, you need some mathematical background because you need to understand graphs and you need to understand how to do certain calculations. Okay, so for that purpose, there is where maths will become helpful. Right, so that is your 4 marks there. And then 2.2 would be your data response. So you will either be given a picture like this, or they will give you a case study, and then questions will be set on that. Okay, so the question would read as follows: study the following and answer the questions that follow. And here they've given you the circular flow of income and spending, and they've given us very specific things here, and probably this is not the way in which you normally see the circular flow, but this is just to show you that there are various ways in which a circular flow can be represented. But there you have your household, you have your government, you have your businesses, right? And there it says payment for purchase of goods and services, and at the bottom there you have wages, dividends. So obviously those are now your payments for goods and services on the top, and at the bottom you have your payments for your factors of production, and we see there the taxes from the businesses to the government, and the taxes from the households to the government as well. Okay, right, so now we look at what are the kinds of questions that they will ask you based on this drawing or diagram that they have shown you here. Right, 2.2.1, identify one injection in the diagram above. Now, as you know, you should by now already know what your injections are, right? So what are the things that, and we had that example in one of the earlier questions. So we know government spending is one of the injections, right? Another injection which we also dealt with earlier is investment, right? So these are all things that causes money to flow in, that causes money to flow into the that comes into the flow, right? So there's government spending, there's investment, and the last one obviously is our exports, because when we sell our goods, we earn money from the people outside. So those are the 3. But now the question says, identify one injection in the diagram. So we need to go back to the diagram and actually look at where do they talk about, where do they speak about government spending, or they speak about, what did I say, exports or investments, right? Now there's taxes, there they've got government purchases, right? And there we've got taxes again, and then we've got social transfers. So here we can see 2 ways in which things are causing money to flow in. It is through government purchases as well as through social transfers. Government purchases from businesses and social transfers to the households. So those are the 2 possible answers that you could give for 2.2.1. And please note that is once again only for 1 mark, because the answer is on the question paper. Name the type of economy portrayed by the above diagram. So again, we need to go back and look at the diagram and see. We see there they've got a household, they've got government, and they've got businesses. There is absolutely no foreign sector being shown anywhere. So therefore, I now know this economy that I'm dealing with is a closed economy. Once again, only for 1 mark, right? Not a very difficult question. Your 2.2.3, 3.3.3, 4.4, they will always read, briefly describe the term, right? So you need to once again know your concepts, right? So briefly describe the term circular flow. Now, obviously this here you can use any description as long as you talk about that it is showing the flow of money between the participants within the economy, or anything to do with how the circular flow shows the relationship between participants, or the flow of money, or the flow of goods and services, but that it's showing the flow of something, right? So as long as you say anything along those lines, you will be given your 2 marks. 2.2.4, distinguish between money flow and real flow. So obviously, as you can see, the name says it already, money flow. So if you think of money flow, what is it showing? It's showing you the flow of money, or deals with money flowing. And which money are we talking about that's flowing around? And that you can also get from your diagram, because if you go look at the diagram, they talk about payments or purchases for goods and services. There's your payments for your factors of production, right? So that is the money flow that they're referring to. And then the next question speaks about the real flow. So your real flow is the flow of your goods and services, what you are receiving for that money that you've spent. Okay. 2.2.5, briefly explain the importance of the factor market in the circular flow. Now there it says 2 by 2, meaning you've got to give at least 2 statements, right? You've got to say and explain, okay? So they're asking you, briefly explain the importance of the factor market. So what role does the factor market play? So obviously, as you know, your factor market is where your factors of production are traded. And then you can go on to say your factors of production consist of capital, entrepreneurship, land, labor, right? So you can then explain further what is meant by the term factors of production. Always remember, when you are answering an economics question, you must assume that the person marking don't know anything. So if you're going to say the factor market is the place where factors of production is being traded, you need to explain to the person now, what do you mean by the term factors of production? So what are these factors of production? So your second point is you're going to now explain factors of production are, and then you explain what they are. Okay, so that is the major role of your factor market, is obviously where your production factors are traded, and your production factors are capital, entrepreneurship, land, and labor. I always say it in that because I always remember the word cell, C-E-L-L. All of us have cell phones, so it's a word we are familiar with. So C-E-L-L, capital, entrepreneurship, land, labor. Okay. Right, then your 2.3, very similar. There it says, study the cartoon below and answer the questions that follow. So you must look at the picture and see what you can make of that, and then answer the questions that follows from this picture. Right, there are the questions, always 5 questions, and they are always 1, 1, 2, 2, and 4, right? So the first one there, name the phase of the business cycle from the cartoon above, but the answer is given to you in the cartoon. It says there, on that bowing, it says there, recovery. So that is one of the phases of the business cycle. So therefore, I know my answer there is recovery phase. The next question says, identify an economic activity in the cartoon above. I've got to go back to the cartoon again and see what this cartoon is dealing with, right? And I think it's a bit too small that you can't really see it, but if you look in your book, you will be able to see they talk about that the joblessness is taken off. So therefore, that is what the economic activity is, right? Why do you think that jobless will not lead to an economic takeoff? Obviously, how can it if we have such a high rate of unemployment? Next question. Which business cycle indicator does jobless refer to? And obviously, employment figures is an example of your coincident indicators. And remember, we had this question about coincident earlier on. Coincident tell us where the economy is currently at, right? How would you describe the recovery phase of a typical business cycle? Now, once again, here it doesn't show you 2 by 2, but because it's for 4 marks, you should know you must give 2 marks, two answers there. So therefore, there you are given 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet points. So any 2 of that will be allowed. But I have to urge and I have to warn that at this, for 2.2.5, those you don't have to answer exactly as is there, right? You can do it in your own words, but it's got to have something to do with that, and you will then be awarded the marks for that. Okay, so just look at that answer quickly. Exports will start to increase. Now, if you just write that, you're going to get 1 mark, right? So now you are saying, what is the result of that increase in exports, right? The next point there, businesses start to hire a few more people and order raw material. Businesses might even take out more loans from financial institutions, right? So full sentences in order to get 2 marks per answer. Right, then your 8-mark questions that I spoke about earlier on, you get 2 of them, 2.4 and 2.5. Now 2.4 or 4.4 or 3.4 would always be based on the notes that you've dealt with in the classroom, whereas your 2.5, 3.5 and 4.5 will be sort of application of your knowledge that you have, right? So 2.4 says, compare the goods and economic goods, compare free goods and economic goods in the economy. Now, just there it says 2 by 4 is 8. So they're talking about, here we are talking about free goods on the one side, and we're talking about economic goods on the other side. So here they're just asking you to give a comparison, but one of the questions related to this section that they like to ask is to say to you, tabulate the difference between free goods and economic goods. And when it says tabulate, this is how we then expect you to answer it. Then we expect you to draw a little table, and on the one side, you will write there free goods, and on the other side of the table, you would put there economic goods. Now, when you're answering in a table, you can't just write stuff. What you write on this side must correlate with something on this side. So, for example, if I'm going to say free goods, freely available, right? Then when I speak about economic goods, I must say something about the availability. So, limited supply. You get that? They are freely available, they are limited in supply. Because they are freely available, they do not command a price. Because they are limited in supply, they do command a price. So I'm talking about the same stuff on either side. That's important. Then, so remember I must give 2 points, and then I can just give an example, right? And an example of a free good would be something like sunlight. Sunlight is there for everybody to enjoy. We don't have to pay for it, right? And then example here would be anything. It can be shoes, it can be food, whatever, right? So that is now, then that would be the answer for to give you your 8 marks, okay? Because you got 2 and 2 and 2 is 4. 2 and 2 is another 4, which will give you your 8 marks then. Right. Number 2.5. Evaluate the negative impact of production on the environment. Now, I need you to read and look at that question very carefully. It's asking you to evaluate. So you need to look at what is production doing with regards to the environment. And very important here, they specifically ask you about the negative impacts, right? They're not saying about the positives. They only want you to concentrate on the negatives of production on the environment. So, what we're going to do now, how does production impact the environment negatively? What are the things that they do wrong? So the first thing that we notice is that many times trees are used for paper, trees are used for furniture making, so they are constantly cutting down trees because they're also even clearing the forests to make place for housing projects. So that is the one big impact that production has, is a concept known as deforestation. Now, we didn't teach you this in the classroom, but we had discussions on how the environment is impacted by what's happening around it. So you need to now be able to apply your knowledge, okay? So you can talk about deforestation, but you can't speak just on deforestation for 8 marks. You've got to give different ideas here, right? So you can explain how the deforestation and the removing of the trees and how that is bad for the environment, because now it destroys the soil. You can't use for planting anymore, or because it's made way for housing. So we could sit with something like food shortages because we haven't got space to grow food anymore, or whatever you want to, however you want to explain that. So there you've got 1, 2, 4 marks already just for discussing that. Now you can discuss another aspect of production, right? You can talk about with the machinery being used and the amount of production taking place and all the bad pollution being emitted into the air, and how this is now contributing to global warming, and people are suffering with chest problems and that because of all the pollution in the air, etc. So you can look at from that perspective also the pollution that's increasing, the deforestation that's happening, and then you just write a story around that and how bad it is for the environment in order to get your 8 marks there, right? And your 2.5, your 3.5, your 4.5, they will all be these open-ended questions. So it is questions where you actually got to think a little bit, right? It's not just, okay, this is the answer, I studied this is what I'm going to write. You need to actually, that is why I said at the beginning, when you look at which questions to choose in section B, make sure you are able to answer the 8-mark questions. Okay, so in section B, you've now seen, you've got your 2.1 with your 4 easy marks, right? The first one is you must list 2 things or just give 2 things there. The second one is where you've got to make a statement, write a full sentence in order to get 2 marks. Then your 2.2 and 2.3 are your case studies, where you have 1, 1, 2, 2, 4 answers, with your 4-mark answer being application. And then you have 2.4, your 8 marker, and 2.5, also an 8 marker, right? 2.4 being just regurgitating knowledge, recalling knowledge, and 2.5, the application of knowledge again. Okay, so grade 10s, we've done quite a bit now. We must still do, I must still explain one more section, the section C to you, but we're going to take a little bit of a break now, just so that I can get a break and give my voice some time, and then we'll come back and we'll do section C, and then we will look at a possible sort of exam type questions that you will face and how we will apply what we have discussed this morning. Thank you.